welcome to this IMechE Talking Together event in collaboration with RAeS and IET, which today is with Rolls-Royce Chief Customer Officer for Civil Aerospace, Jacqueline Sutton. Jackie is also the co-chair of the Women in Aviation and Aerospace Charter and has become acknowledged for her outstanding leadership in promoting diversity and inclusion across the aviation sector. Today you have myself, Francesca Guardavaccaro from the RAeS, and Philipa Kugonza from the IMechE. We are both young professional engineers at Rolls-Royce and volunteer on the two institution committees. Today, we will be exploring the gendered aspects of mental health and well-being from the perspective of a senior female professional in a STEM company. So to begin, let's first give Jackie an opportunity to introduce herself to you and give a brief overview of her current role at Rolls-Royce.
Okay, hi there, and hello to everybody that may be watching this, and also to Francesca and Philipa. It's great to be spending some time with you. As you say, yes, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at the Civil Aerospace part of Rolls-Royce, based here in the UK, but my responsibility is global for all of the customers that may operate Rolls-Royce large engines in any part of the world, and indeed also the aircraft manufacturer customers, Airbus and Boeing, all fall within my responsibility. And I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic team of professionals based in all different parts of the world, working with our customers from day to day. I've been with Rolls-Royce about 13 years, but I've been in the aerospace industry itself for around 30 years. So fantastic industry, fantastic job, and thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be with you.
All right, it's lovely to have you, Jackie. Thank you for that introduction. So I just wanted to know, how has your approach to the conversation around mental health and well-being changed from your early careers up until now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because as I just said, you know, without dating myself too much, but clearly I'm somewhat older than our two young professionals that are with me today. 30 years ago, or more actually, that was when I joined the aerospace industry, but I had worked in the construction industry for about 3.5 years before that. So I think it's absolutely true to say that unfortunately back in those days, mental health was always associated with actual mental ill health. It was taboo, if you like, to talk about it at all, because people directly associated it with ill health and felt uncomfortable, if you like, with having any discussion relating to ill health. And I think that the progress is absolutely amazing since then to now. Having said that, I would say the progress that I've seen in terms of it becoming much more part of our day-to-day life, much more part of our day-to-day conversation, I still think it's probably only in the last 5 or 6 years, certainly in my experience, that would be a normal, in inverted commas, subject that we would feel comfortable to talk about openly, particularly in a work context. It may well be something we've talked about for much longer with friends and family, but if I think about a work context, I would say that it's only really in the last 5 or 6 years that it's become much more routinely part of what we talk about. And mental health in all its areas, you know, how to establish good health and how to cope with any form of deterioration that we may see both in ourselves and in others.
Yeah, thank you for that response, Jackie. I definitely see what you're saying. I mean, it's something that's getting easier to talk about now, which is good. So, you know, hopefully a couple of years from now, it should be something completely natural to talk about. So did you ever experience imposter syndrome when you were a young professional, like myself and Francesca, especially being a woman? And what is your outlook on this, and how can it impact your confidence?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, you know, in some respects is a term that is commonly used now that really describes that feeling of somewhat fearful and apprehension, you know, when you're put in an environment where you start self-doubting and start worrying about whether you're going to be able to deliver what you've got to deliver, whether it's a speech or a presentation, or indeed whether when you've just been put in a new role, and you sit there thinking, crikey, how long will it take before somebody catches on to the fact that I really don't know what I'm doing, And the first thing I would say is that for sure I've had that experience, and it wouldn't just be as a young early career professional. I still experience that now. I experienced that certainly when I was fortunate enough to be offered the role that I have now. And I think the really important thing, though, that I have learned in those early career times that I felt it and now, is first and foremost that I think pretty much everybody experiences that in one way or the other, whether frankly male or female. I think, however, that in my experience there is some tendency amongst more women than men to dwell on it, to worry about it, to feel anxious about it, to self-doubt, and to then let that hold us back, particularly from putting ourselves out there to really have a go and go for that new role. It's a classic female symptom to look at an application form or for an advert for a job that has 10 requirements of skills, and to actually focus on the 3 that we think we can't do rather than the 7 that we think we can. And I've certainly found myself in that situation. And what have I learned, to help me deal with it over the years? The first thing that I've learned is to remember that if you're in that room, you're new in your role, there may well be others who are new in their role, and to remind yourself that actually you're not going to be the only one in the room feeling that. And secondly, to really start to build some allies, to find people that you work with from day to day, who you can trust to share how you're feeling and get some support. And you'd be surprised, in my experience, if you build up the courage to actually say to somebody else, actually, I'm feeling like this, how are you feeling? Invariably, in 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, the person you're saying it to will be really pleased that you've said it, because actually they're feeling it too. And then you find that you found yourself an ally straight away, and it helps more and more as you get into a job to feel that you've got that kind of support around you, which comes from making yourself vulnerable enough to share your worry to somebody else within your sphere of day-to-day work. And before you know it, you find that actually you're building yourself a little kind of network of allies who are able to support you in those feelings. And that's the kind of thing certainly that I've found that helps.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I learned that it's always good to speak up, and also that there is always a learning curve in every new job. So hopefully we'll see it more in the future, that nobody is expecting you to know exactly what you're doing straight at the beginning of your new task or job. So yeah, it's
exactly. And so often actually we are harder on ourselves than the people that are around us. And the little voice in our head going, you see, you don't really know what you're talking about. Actually, we're saying that to ourselves. It's not the impression that the rest of the room has.
Yeah, that's true. So, well, I guess it can be tough and isolated being an employee from groups that are less represented in the engineering world. So I imagine you are sometimes the only one in the room in a STEM position as a senior as yours. So how do you approach these mentally ahead of important meetings?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's one that I've been asked a few times and I've reflected on a lot. So the first thing I should say is that I was brought up in a family of where I have 3 brothers. So I've been used from very early days, I guess, to having a more male environment around me than female environment around me. But I can't say that I ever really noticed that particularly, you know, especially when you're growing up, it's just your family, right? You know, it's just the normal thing for you. I think the first time I noticed it was when I got my first aerospace job, and I joined, you know, and I went off to the factory to start working, and realized very quickly, you know, within a couple of days, that actually there were hardly any women around me at all. It was a sea of men. And I remember that striking me and thinking, crikey, oh, okay. So this is, you know, this is a different environment that I'm going to be in. But I found that, so how did I prepare myself? First and foremost, to have the courage to remember to be myself. So it kind of takes us back to the imposter syndrome thing. It can be even more scary, perhaps, that now you're in an environment where you're in a new role, and also the all of the audience in the room, you know, are pretty much men, and therefore you can feel even more exposed, or running the risk of being even more judged, if you like, by what you may say because you're a woman versus everybody else in there. But I found that the most important thing was to remember to be myself, to remember that all I can do is show up and do my job to the best of my ability, and to hope and trust that those in the room would allow that to happen. And I found that that ally building that I mentioned a minute ago just became even more important. So to begin to build, especially when you're in a big conference room, where possible, to have identified others that you know are going to be at that meeting, or others that you know are going to that conference, so that you've got some people that will support you. That gives you a bit more self-confidence, that then allows you to be yourself, and over time, you know, to have your performance speak for itself, to such an extent these days that I think much less about what the room's going to look like, because over time, I guess over the years, I found that way to be myself in that situation. I know where my allies are going to come from, or how to deal with a particular situation, which only comes from experience. And so I draw on that really in order to help me relax, still be myself, and remember, and that's what helps me mentally prepare, is that these days I'm always able to remind myself of other situations which have probably been scarier or harder, and that kind of helps you with that particular situation, because you think, well, I got through those and everyone said I did fine, so I'm going to draw on remembering that, and help me with that next situation.
Thank you. Yeah, I relate to your experience. I mean, having chosen an engineering path, I've always been more among men than women, but I didn't notice until very recently. And but yeah, I noticed that people tend to have your back, and so it's just, again, more an issue with myself than actually with the other people. The impression that I had is not they judge you because you're younger or you're a woman, or because you have less experience. It's more me judging myself. So again, something to work on probably. But yeah, I think that the environment is still very friendly, even though I'm one of the few women in my team, in my department. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pleased to hear that. And I would say, though, that we are fortunate in that respect, aren't we? Because there are going to be people that are having much tougher experiences. But again, I think that that's why we always talk about diversity and inclusion, because actually what makes it scary is being in any kind of minority where you may feel outnumbered. And it's how we help people feel included that helps you relax so that you can be at your best. Because what makes you unable to be at your best is when you're feeling isolated and you're not relaxed, you're anxious, and you're not able to perform to the best of your ability. And then that can become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's really, you know, I definitely, the longer I've spent in my career and the more senior roles that you get, the more responsibility you feel to play your part in trying to make sure that the environment is as inclusive as possible, so that everyone in that room or on the team, you know, is feeling that they've got the opportunity to be included and have their voice heard. That's the challenge for all of us, I think.
Yes, totally true. So, well, this year has certainly been uncertain for many people, for us in Rolls-Royce too. So my question is, what has been your most uncertain time in your professional life, and how did you overcome that? And was this uncertainty in career due to gender or something completely different and unrelated to that?
Yeah, that's a really good question that causes, you know, is worthwhile reflecting on, especially at this stage of my career. And for sure, the moment for me, and it was more than a moment, it was kind of probably a year, 18 months of uncertainty, was at the time I would have been in my early 30s, I guess. And I'd been given a new role, and I was very pleased to have received the promotion. And I was very happy with my immediate boss and my colleagues that I was working with. This was a previous business to Rolls-Royce. But when I looked up further, you know, because of the promotion, it had given me more exposure to the more senior leadership within the business. And I started, therefore, to take an interest in the executive leadership team and who the people were on the executive leadership team, the board, and who was on the board leading the business that I was with. And I started to become, to be perfectly frank, a bit demoralized. And I started thinking that I wasn't particularly inspired by the leadership of that particular business at that particular time. Not inspired because my perception was that they were more interested in, you know, to be perfectly frank, kind of furthering their own career rather than looking after the business and developing the business. So they didn't really have the heart, they didn't really have the good of the business and the employees at the heart of everything that they did. They were much more focused on investors, share price, money making, all of which is really important, of course, but it's not the only area. The really important area, of course, is employees, customers. You know, there's so many other stakeholders that are important. So I began to get a bit disillusioned and think, well, is this just what large corporations are like? And I started to question whether it was the kind of environment that I wanted to stay in. So it was uncertain in the sense that I was questioning my own commitment to remaining in the aerospace industry because of this particular business's leadership approach. Just at that moment, very fortunately for me, I was allocated an external mentor from another FTSE 100 company, who was, and still is to this day, my mentor, one of the most inspiring people in terms of his sense of responsibility for others, his high integrity, his incredibly high capability, but overall the kind of person that he is. And we got into discussing this quite a lot. And I opened up to him and explained how I was feeling. And through those conversations, it really helped me recognize that not all large corporations are led by people that have uninspiring motivation, you know, so from my personal perspective. And he re-established kind of my faith, if you like, in that, and also challenged me, you know, well, if you want to see a different kind of environment, what, you know, how are you going to change it, and what contribution can you make to creating a different environment? And it really provided renewed motivation for me to not only to stay, but also to do my bit to help create an environment that is more inclusive and more inspiring, not just for myself, but, you know, for other people in the business.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Jackie, especially on the bit about changing it yourself. You know, a lot of times we see things in the world that we don't appreciate or like or would want to see different, but then, you know, most people just assume, you know, it's somebody else's role to do it. So, you know, taking on that great initiative and responsibility to create that change that you want to see is definitely one of the fastest ways we could change this world. So winding it down a bit, away from all this responsibility you have, what's your favorite wind down activity or hobby?
Yeah, so it's hard to pick one, but no, I'm an absolute people person. So the best thing for me to wind down is to be with my friends and family, whether we have a walk together or go for dinner together or do something like that, but also to go and see a production, you know, a play or an opera or a concert, or, you know, live productions as well, I really love. So those would be the two things, but primarily, you know, I've got 9 nephews and nieces, and, you know, I love spending time with all of them, young people, you know, all ages, keep you on your feet, keep you enjoying life. That would be, if I had to pick one, you know, that's my favorite way to spend my time when I'm not working.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's quite similar for most of us. Family is everything at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's great. So your career path has been more in the realm of sales and forging relationships with large customer bases, as you'd spoken about earlier. So have you ever encountered any form of sexism on trips, and how did this make you feel? Were you disappointed or just expecting it due to the context or nature of the industry?
Yeah, so I would have to go back a long way to think of any examples, which is a good sign of how times have changed. You know, it was still in the early 90s when I was first in sales, relatively unusual for a woman to be traveling on business on her own in various different countries. And it took some time because, you know, if I went in to see a customer on my own, I have some examples of people, 1 or 2 looking over my shoulder and saying, okay, so the interpreter's here, where's your boss? Because I speak foreign languages. So I definitely had that a couple of times. And, you know, generally, you know, is it just you kind of questions, you know, where's the person that has the authority to make a decision or to negotiate with me? And, you know, but that has not been the case since those early 90s, you know, and that is another sign of the progress that definitely the world is going through. And I'm always respectful also of the fact that different cultures, different countries are developing, you know, at different paces. And I think we should always be sensitive of what environment is normal, in inverted commas, in one culture versus another, whilst also making sure at the same time that we're being that we're not being put in the wrong situation or an awkward situation. You know, I'm happy to say that certainly in the last, you know, 10, 15 or maybe more years, you know, that kind of very overt sexism is not something that I've experienced to that degree. But I'm also realistic, you know, as I say, different people have different experiences at different times across different parts of the world. We just need to continue to make progress in this area. And equality in general, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter movement in last year has reminded us, you know, that the fight and the struggle for true equality, regardless of colour, gender, sexual orientation, etc. You know, that's what I feel passionate about. We're all born the same. We should all be treated equal. And that's the thing that I think is the most important. And, you know, there's still a lot more progress to be made, but we should also celebrate that in some areas we are making progress, and there is so many people in this world that feel the same, that also want to achieve the same.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is more general awareness now, and people are more sensitive about this subject. So we're making progress. Let's say that. So the next question, with your role as co-chair for the UK's Women in Aviation Charter and Aerospace Charter, you have a fantastic platform to make change. Can you tell us a little more about this, and if there are any parts of this charter that look at the gender aspects of mental health and well-being?
Yes, the Women in Aviation Aerospace Charter is a fantastic initiative that started at the Farnborough Air Show 3 years ago now, when a group of like-minded women, and this was actually before I joined the Charter, I've been the co-chair for a year now, were actually at the air show together, looked around the room and recognised that there was still far more men than women in the particular environment they were in, and decided, having been inspired by other initiatives such as Women in Finance, and there are some others around the place, that actually, you know, we need to do something to change this. We want to work together to improve the situation. And so they got together, established some key principles in order to achieve better gender balance in the aviation and aerospace sector. So it crosses aviation, meaning the aircraft operators such as airlines, and aerospace in terms of manufacturers such as Rolls-Royce. And I have a co-chair who represents more the aviation side of the house, Sumati, and my job is to represent more the aerospace side of the house, and then working together to establish what the key goals are that we will see in order to achieve greater gender balance, and then to really just go out and spread the word and work with businesses, large or small, within those industries to encourage them and gain their commitment to sign up to the key goals of the Charter. And we've been overwhelmed with interest. We have more than 230 signatories now, which is great progress in a fairly short period of time. And we have passionate women and men who guide and steer the Charter and work from day to day, all pro bono, all just because we feel inspired and motivated to help this industry really move forward. And in terms of what help women can access, absolutely, one of the best elements around the website, and I know that we'll share the link, you know, as part of the output from this time we're spending together. There's a fantastic section on the website called the Resource Hub, which helps women look at all the different stages of their career and access resources that can help them to guide, give ideas, and help to find, you know, ways to work through things. It's got contact details of others that can help further on specific subjects. So I really encourage anybody that's watching this that is interested to tap into that resource hub as part of the Charter website, and you know, you will see what wealth of resources are there designed to help people.
Thank you, Jackie. So clearly having someone like yourself at the top of the company to look up gives hope for the next generation who will carry on driving forward gender equality in our industry and beyond. So if you were to sit down and talk together with your 18-year-old now, what would you say? Would you, for example, emphasize the importance of acknowledging the gendered aspects of mental health and well-being, and how certain scenarios as a young woman in a male-dominated industry can take a toll?
Yes, I would, you know, talking back to my 18-year-old self and remembering how I felt when I was first setting off to university, which was what I was doing when I was 18, I would definitely talk about remembering to relax in situations and to have confidence in my abilities, to recognize that everybody has to learn, that everybody is in similar situation of feeling anxiety or apprehension about something, to take comfort from that, and then to do what I need to do in order to help myself feel supported. So it's back to the reaching out to allies, it's back to the finding the support network that you can open up to and go to when you're feeling anxious. I must say, you know, my whole life, friends as well as family, certain friends at certain phases of my life have been the people that have kept me able to move forward and help me at times of stress and anxiety, and, you know, remaining loyal, looking out for friends as well as them looking out for you, you know, all of that support network has been absolutely invaluable. And I think when I was 18, I was almost more thinking that I needed a high volume of friends. And as you get older, you realize actually what you need is those few that you know you'll always be able to count on, and equally who will always know that they can count on you. And you know, I wouldn't be here now without the support that I've had, sure from my family, but certainly from certain key friends at certain critical aspects of my life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jackie. Good reminder of quality, not quantity. people you keep around you. So adding value, if you can count on each other, it's a lot better than just having plenty. Yeah,
exactly.
So moving on to my next question, if you could describe your journey from education to the role that you have today in 3 words, what would they be?
Yes, 3 words from education to the role I do today. I would say unexpected. Why would I say that? Because, you know, when I was 18, I had no idea I would end up in the aerospace industry. So I would say unexpected. I would say stimulating. Because again, you know, I think when I was 18, the thought of work was about earning money, you know, and education was fun because I was learning things. Actually, stimulation of my job and the things that I learn through my work, you know, it has been amazing and still is amazing. So I would say stimulating as my second. And then the third, I would definitely say fun. You know, because we spend many hours working. So it better be fun as well as stimulating. And, you know, that's the other thing that I've found over the years, is that you don't make, you know, not every job decision you make is the right one. You know, I've tried things, I've decided they weren't for me, you know, and that's the other thing that's been important is move on if you're not happy. Try and make it work, absolutely, but don't expect that every job decision you make is hitting the bullseye every time, you know, especially in your early career. You just got to try things and not beat yourself up about, oh, what a failure I am if you decide that it's the wrong decision in after a couple of years. You know, I've been there myself, and it's not failure, it's learning. You know, finding out what you don't like is equally important to finding out what you do. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that advice, Jackie. I'm sure Francesca and I have a lot to think about in that department.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we've asked you some fantastic questions today. Is there any question that you'd like to ask us as two young female engineers developing in a society that is very different to the one that, you know, you've spoken about, that you encountered as a young professional? Is there anything you'd like to ask us?
Yes, I think there is. I mean, so very different. I hope that it is, but I'm really keen to hear your perspective. So from when you were in education, were you outnumbered? You know, were there a lot more men doing engineering when you were studying it than women? And I think, Francesca, you mentioned a minute ago that you didn't really notice it at university, but then in transition through to work, you did. So can you just explain, were there more men than women at uni, and then actually it was just less noticeable compared to at work, or and how's that transition been? I'm really interested to hear.
I mean, it was still noticeable because you could see that in a classroom of, I don't know, 90 people, only probably, I think, less than 10 were girls, and the rest of them were boys, men. So yeah, it was noticeable. It just didn't have any effect. I mean, it was probably a more easygoing environment. You know, I mean, men really, well, boys like to joke around. So I mean, that kind of environment. So that's why it was less noticeable, probably. Transitioning into the work environment, of course, the rules changed. So, I mean, I don't think I was affected very much from that compared to probably, well, other women around the company and other women in general. So I don't think I suffered the male-dominated environment that much, but still, the other day I was in a meeting with 4 or 5 very experienced Rolls-Royce employees, all men, and I was leading the meeting, and that was really, really intimidating. At the end, everything went well, but still, I mean, I could feel the pressure in doing so. So something that probably I didn't even think about when I was at university. So that's my experience, my point of view. But I hope, I mean, as you said, it's more us working on ourselves. So I hope that going forward, I will be able to deal better with those kind of experiences, and yeah, being less frightened of doing them. So yeah, much to learn going forward from a personal experience and growth. So yeah.
Right, and Philipa, I know you've been interning at Rolls-Royce, and now you're coming to join us full time, which is fantastic news. And how are you feeling, looking, you know, how's your experience been so far in that transition, and how are you feeling as you approach that stage?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Jackie. I think for me, if I was to put into context, I think it's also different different cultural backgrounds as well, like make the change a bit different. So the rate at which females in senior positions or in engineering roles is developing quite quick. Let's say in the UK, where I'm originally from, Uganda, it's not as quick. So if I'm to compare the internships I've done in Uganda compared to like the UK, I remember there's this one particular company I did an internship for when I was in Uganda, and this is when I was still trying to figure out what kind of engineering I wanted to focus on, because I did mechanical, but it was so wide. So this is before I got into the aerospace industry. So this is back in Uganda, and I got to the interview and I was asked what department exactly it is that I wanted to work in. And I said I wanted to work on the shop floor. I wanted a really hands-on job to get the experience. And the interviewers just looked at me like, are you sure? Like, this is someone you're trying to take on board? And they're like, really? Like, the shop floor is that? And I kid you not, I was the only female on that shop floor for the 3 months that I worked there. But then comparing it to my experience with, let's say, companies I've interned with in the UK, it's a lot different. I think it's, getting a bit more natural because, well, comparing it to university in a class of about, let's say, 200 students, I could say maybe actually 50 would be a stretch, like 40 of us were females. So of so many people, I could tell you every female's name in my class. I would struggle with the males because there was just that many of them. But then again, I feel like it is getting better because like I said, when I was on internship and stuff, there's loads of females in engineering roles, loads of people to look up to. It's actually becoming like overwhelmingly good at the moment. And I feel like in a way it also is, there's that support system. You're not in it alone. Like loads of people have, been in situations similar to Francesca or yourself. So I feel like it is definitely getting better. It's just different rates in different parts of the world and different companies really. But I'm glad that everyone's embracing equality at the moment.
Okay, yeah, good. And if there was one thing, that you could think of that Rolls-Royce could do better or more of in order to help you feel more included and make more progress, have you got any suggestions of one thing that you think that that we could do better?
To be honest, I feel like well, comparing to the past, I feel like a lot is being done at the moment already. Like never at any point did I feel out of place, whether it was for race, gender, any of that. Like they've been very embracing of, they do, champion diversity. But I think it's just one thing, I wouldn't say something that they could change, but something they could continue doing is just celebrating that difference in people, making them feel welcome, because I couldn't actually complain about like one single thing. So it's just to keep, championing that diversity and just making people feel welcome.
Great, and not assume that,
like the problem has been solved, abracadabra, it's all gone away. Like just, it's a progressive thing. So yeah, that should be it.
Yeah, I think, as Philipa said, a lot has been done already and is still being done. But probably they could promote more the positive and powerful female figures that we have around the company. I think that could be done a lot more, showing that there are great examples. Maybe some of them are open to mentoring or to giving advice, and I don't think that's something that is publicized enough, let's say.
Right, more visibility and more, okay, no, that's good feedback, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so this has been a fantastic discussion today around the gendered aspects and mental health and well-being, and I would like to really thank you, Jackie, for your time, and I really hope you have enjoyed this interview, because I can see I have. Hopefully Francesca has as well. So today. Please look out for other events and webinars to everyone who's watching that are available now on our IMechE, RAeS, and IET YouTube channels. This session is recorded for people who are watching it anyway, and many support resources available from your professional institutions, and they can be found in the bio. Thank you for watching and take care.